Welcome back, Flyers nitty-gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, and a special guest for the evening, a member of the team, somebody I've been trying to get on here for a while due to traveling. It's been a little bit difficult, Vasili Gianarakos. And I practiced that over and over again prior to this, and I think I got it right. Vasili, what's up, buddy?
Everything's pretty good. How about you, Yariv?
Dude, things are going well, man. It's been a good hockey season so far, and even though the Flyers are currently at the bottom of the division, they definitely have started strong.
So definitely.
Yeah. So for those who are not aware, Vasili does write for our site, so make sure to look out for his content. He's obviously on Twitter. He's got good insights. So it's honestly why I immediately reached out to you a while ago when you joined, because I noticed that I really liked a lot of your commenting. I liked the way your thought process worked. And I was like, all right, let's get this guy on the podcast. He definitely should come on.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate you having me on and talk a bit of Flyers hockey, just hockey in general. I really think, the way the team started off, it's bringing some promising, things to the forefront, but we'll see, I guess, how they kind of play out throughout the season, how things kind of progress.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And we'll get into that in a minute. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to the sponsor, that is Gym Steaks here, Gym Steaks on 3rd and South. Make sure to check out Gym Steaks. They are Flyers fans. They sponsor us because we're a Flyers coverage site. So make sure to check them out. Make sure to get a cheesesteak. It is hockey season, so it's time to eat cheesesteaks. All right.
Whenever I get to Philly, I got to get a cheesesteak, man.
There you go. And you make sure you go to gyms, otherwise they'll kill us. All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to a recap of last game. So Philadelphia Flyers finally lose their first game in regulation. They go down 4-2 to the Florida Panthers. The fourth goal was an empty netter. The third goal that they gave up was a shorthanded goal, unfortunately. But it was a hard battle. It was a good game, at least overall. The Flyers didn't really do themselves any favors by taking 7 minor penalties. That's 14 minutes of being shorthanded, at almost 14 minutes. It was disappointing from that standpoint, where I feel like they kind of shot themselves in the foot, but there are positives to take away from that as well. Again, the Flyers did come out, they did produce goals. They had a lead at one point, and it just didn't work out the way that they thought. But Florida is currently, I guess, them and Edmonton Oilers are currently first in the NHL in as far as overall record, being 5-0. Expected a tough battle, and without having Ryan Ellis in the lineup, he was definitely missed. Your quick thoughts, Vasili, on the game, and then we'll get into the topics.
Yeah, so I mean, my first thoughts basically watching was that the Panthers are definitely one of the best teams in the whole league.
Yep.
I put them top 10, 100%. So just for the fact that the Flyers can hang with a team of their caliber, that really just shows that, things are trending in the right direction. If they would have went into the game and got the doors blown off them, then that kind of be like a reason for concern there, right? Another thing that I also noticed, obviously the offense, I mean, with all the penalties, didn't have really the chances and opportunities to click as it was in the previous games. So, I mean, discipline, that's a big factor. But also, I think the players kind of need to be aware of surroundings on the ice, just because I know throughout that game, the 2 referees, one of them kept going kind of in and out. So with one referee on the ice and you're playing the game of hockey, it's a very fast game. Usually they're going to tend towards calling everything versus letting things get out of hand, right? So as a team, they should have tried to kind of adapt a little bit more and kind of understand, okay, there's only one ref on the ice. If he sees something, it's probably going to get called. There's nobody really for him to confer with in terms of those types of calls, right?
Sure.
And then second thing, I mean, Claude Giroux, everybody says elite passer, but he's looking like an elite scorer to me right now. Big slap shot is coming back, and that's something I thought that was kind of missing from his game the past couple of years. You'd see him try to wind up for those one-timers on the power play, and he wouldn't really have much success. And this year, I don't know if it's luck or anything. It's only 4 games in. He's obviously a great player, but I mean, to see him score, 3 goals in the first 4 games, that's pretty impressive for Giroux there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. The interesting thing about Giroux shooting, I personally, if anybody, whoever listens, and I don't know, Vasili, if you had a chance to listen to this podcast, I mention this all the time. this is very much a team game, despite all of the jumping on one guy consistently, or thinking one person is responsible for a play. I very rarely believe that. I think Drew, quite frankly, I think the level of talent that's available, even without Kevin Hayes on this team, I think it kind of opens him up to shooting more. I think maybe even in his mind, his role has potentially changed to the team where he's like, I no longer have to be the setup guy, where that was kind of his thing. Now it's kind of like, especially when Kevin Hayes comes back, I mean, you have 3 real scoring lines. You have a 4th line that seems to be getting better and better every game. And I do want to talk about McEwen at the end of this. I think it kind of allows him to do that. I mean, before maybe he would have looked for that pass. Now he's kind of looking for the pass to come at him. And you see him kind of calling for it when like Konechny's going up the wing. It's kind of happened several times where Konechny feeds him the puck and then just like a banger.
And I think too with that line is people forget, right? Like in 2019-20, when the team was having tons of success, that was the first line on the team. And Konechny was having his best year. Giroux wasn't having his best year, but he was having a good year. Couturier was having, I think that was the year he won the Selke. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have all those 3 guys together. They've played together before. They have chemistry. So I think putting Giroux with guys that he's familiar with is, I mean, a benefit, just because typically he's usually a pass first guy. You put him on a line with players maybe he hasn't been too familiar with, he's going to kind of resort back to, his what he usually does, which is obviously pass more than shoot. You put him with guys he's more comfortable with, and he's going to kind of be a little more loose and more willing to kind of try different things, because he knows, okay, in the back of my head, if I go over here on the ice, I know Konechny's going to be there. I know Couturier is going to be in the spot that he's going to be, right? So that's the thing when you're such a smart player like Giroux is, that hockey IQ sets in and the familiarity with those line mates sets in, and then you see him kind of loosen up and take more shots, I think, versus pass. Yeah,
no, I think that's well said as well. And it's interesting because all 3 of them were a -3 last game. You wouldn't have thought that kind of watching the game. Like, I don't feel like the plus minus is reflective of that, but it's kind of an unfortunate, reality.
Yeah, unfortunate events occurred, obviously, for goals against in terms of them. But I think too, when you're playing against a center that's not defensively like responsible as Alexander Barkov, it's, we always think of Couturier. Wow, he's this great shutdown defensive center. You could arguably say that Barkov is on the exact same level as Couturier. So, I mean, to see him shut them down and, them not really produce as much as you would see aside from Giroux on the power play, it's not, out of the ordinary. I personally thought going into the game, I mean, you have, in the article I wrote, I was saying for the Flyers to win, the key for them is going to be Brassard, Atkinson, and Farabee, just because you have Barkov and Couturier lines are going to cancel each other out. And then from there, you're kind of looking at your depth to pick up the pieces. And then unfortunately for the Flyers, the penalty trouble kind of killed them. Yeah, for sure. And I think also, and I mentioned this in the very beginning, I think not having Ryan Ellis, I think hurts that matchup a little bit, where if they have the top pairing, and I like Justin Braun, but he's not a top pairing guy. He's more just reliable, and that's why he gets that call. But I think if you have Provorov up there with Ryan Ellis, I do think we see probably a different outcome 5-on-5 and probably a different outcome to the game. On that one, would you say that he probably would have been the difference maker on that night? I would say he would have definitely helped a lot in terms of the penalty kill. Like that one goal that they scored right off the draw there. Mm-hmm. Like if Ellis is on the ice there, who knows what he's doing in terms of like helping to tie up the draw or helping just moving like a player out, because it was kind of almost like a moving screen, right? They had a guy come cut in front of Hart like that. I'm not too sure exactly who scored the goal, but I know
Huberdeau.
It was Huberdeau. You're right, exactly. So he literally shot as soon as the screen's moving across. And personally, for me, somebody who's played goalie in the past, if somebody's coming in front of you and you can't see the puck, you're never going to stop it, right? So maybe if you have Ellis there, he somehow stops the moving screen, and that helps. But overall, I mean, Provorov's a great defenseman. He played a solid game. I thought he had some great plays, but Ellis is their best defenseman, in my opinion.
Well, I think to that point, I mean, that's the value of a veteran defenseman, and Provorov is still 24 years old. We're
still young.
We watched Chris Pronger get traded. I watched Victor Hedman struggle at 24. I bring this up all the time. Like, just because a guy is 24 years old does not mean he's a developed player.
No.
especially
And
on the
just
defensive end.
it speaks to how good he is for his age. Because think about the levels he's produced at. He's scored over 10 goals before. He's had seasons of 40 points. That just shows at such a young age, like the potential's there. So like it's crazy to me how there's a lot of people in the fan base, at least before this season, were kind of crucifying him, saying, "Oh, he's not what we expected him to be," yada yada. But I mean, realistically, he's only 24 years old. Typically, defensemen kind of come into their own around what, like 26,
26.
27,
Yeah.
28. So he's not even really, and he's just entering his prime. So we're just seeing, what he could be, scratching the surface. Obviously, Ellis helps him, just like the Niskanen factor. I mean, you have somebody who's as savvy as Ellis with the hockey IQ that he has, and just the fact that he makes the right plays. Like you watch Ellis on the ice, he's not doing anything that's particularly flashy, but if you notice what he's doing, he's never putting the puck in a place where, okay, you look at it and say, wow, he's like giving it right up the middle, or he's putting it in a place where the other team can take advantage. He's always making that smart play.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you lose. That's where the Flyers lost that, I think, last game. There was a lot of, situations where I feel like they were kind of running around their own zone. Because the Panthers have a high octane offense, and they're very good on the cycle, down low on the forecheck. So a guy like Ellis, I mean, like I said, invaluable in terms of who knows how he would have been able to break up plays, even outlet pass differently that could create other scoring opportunities or goals for the Flyers. So
yeah, totally. And there's a trickle down effect there. And just to add to that point, I mean, Ellis at 24 was not as good as Provorov at 24.
Exactly.
It took time for him to get to that. And he was behind some very good defensemen until he came into his own maturity. And agreed. I mean, he's always been a highly talented defenseman, but the veteran savviness, I do not think it can be underappreciated, underestimated, mentioned enough. It's a big thing. And actually, I was just listening to Jason Martinez podcast with Tim Saunders on there, and they were talking about how, Fletcher looked at the lineup last year and looked at all the successful teams. And I've been bringing this up from day one of this podcast, that I hate that this is a young man's game. I despise that saying, because all of the successful teams are older. Look at the Montreal Canadiens now, relying on their youth. They are getting clobbered. It does not work that way. It's just not a thing. If there is a young guy who can be relied upon, he is probably exceptional. He's not average. He's not just good. He's exceptional. And actually, that gets me right in my next topic, because I do want to talk about the second line, because I think Joel Farabee is exceptional. I've been talking about him for a while. I don't think he had his best game, but I mean, he was due to have an average game because he's been excellent in every game so far.
6 points in 4 games? So
6 points in 4 games, still leads the team. I think that was the first time I saw Brassard struggle offensively, though I don't think he had a bad game. But it's the first time I saw him be less effective offensively. But I think Atkinson was exactly the same, that he's been all 4 games. And I mean, he's awesome. And I do think it's really exciting. I still could see a scenario where Kevin Hayes steps into that role and you drop down Brassard. But if it continues to work, and you throw Hayes on the third line, I mean, they've been really good.
That's going to be a tough dilemma for Vigneault and the coaching staff. In terms of that second line, though, you're right. The last game, I mean, Brassard offensively, he didn't have the same, flash and same pizzazz he was showing the first couple of games. But I also think you got to go into the quality of the opponent, right? Like totally. The Bruins are a good team. Bruins are a good team, but who is their second line center right now? I believe that is Charlie Coyle.
Yep. Who's a third line center.
It was basically a third line center, which is what you could say Brassard is. So he's punching at his own weight class there, right? Going up against a guy like Coyle. You're going up against, Jonathan Huberdeau, Sam Reinhart, the likes of those players. I mean, I put them a far level above Brassard at this point in his career. I mean, Brassard was, a lot more productive younger in his career when he was playing under Vigneault and also with the Senators. I mean, he's not the same player, but I did notice, even though he struggled a bit offensively last game, he had some good defensive plays still in his own zone. Quick stick. I mean, personally, if I was Vigneault, I'd try to keep the line together as long as it's working, right? If it's working, they're scoring okay, then go ahead, bring Hayes back, plug him in between Lawton and JVR.
So you drop Lindblom, are you saying, or you mean Lindblom and?
Oh, Lindblom, sorry. I mean, drop
Yeah,
Lawton. My mistake.
yeah.
My mistake.
No, it's all good.
But
I know what you meant.
yeah, so I plug him in there, drop Lawton. But I mean, obviously, you could always swap out Hayes and Brassard. And then, as you were saying, I mean, Farabee, I mean, he's been pretty much the sniper that they're kind of looking for. Obviously, like there's some opportunities you've seen this season where he probably could have shot, but he passed. But I mean, you're playing with a guy like Atkinson, you want to get him the puck too.
Yeah,
So it kind of makes sense.
they seem to have very good chemistry together, which is why, I mean, we're going to talk about the PK specifically, but
Yeah.
they pair them on the PK for a reason. They never stop moving their feet. I think it's just a really nice compliment for Brassard, and I think you are definitely spot on there. While Brassard didn't do too much offensively, I do think that's been the part of his game that's probably been underestimated. He's actually been very solid defensively. I haven't really seen anything glaring or any issues. All right. I just had like a major malfunction and all of Zoom just crashed. So that was fun. Vasili was nice enough to wait while I rebooted and got everything back to life here. So we're finishing up talking about Brassard and his role with the team and how we were talking about Hayes and potential of using Hayes down there and then kind of reassessing the lines from there. But I do want to get into the fourth line here. Let's roll past that since maybe it was bad juju to talk about it. I do want to talk about the fourth line here because I actually think it started off as a weakness for the team, and I think it's actually getting better. I think Nate Thompson is just his normal sturdy self, not offensive in any way. I would actually argue probably missed some opportunities and maybe he should have had a scoring chance. But he's definitely been solid all around. I think Nicholas Aube-Kubel had a really nice play yesterday. Nice rebound from the previous game. And I think Zach McEwen has gotten better every game. And this is kind of what I was expecting from him. I do expect him to stick in the lineup, even if all are healthy. He seems like a really good addition to this team. He's got the physicality. He hasn't dropped the gloves or anything yet, but he's definitely extremely physical. His forecheck, his skating is better than I think most people anticipated. And I just really like his game. What do you think about McEwen? What do you think about the fourth line?
I think you're like right on there, hitting the nail on the head in terms of the fourth line. I wasn't really sure what to expect going into the season. I mean, Thompson's a veteran. He's a bit on the older side, so it's always a bit of a question mark. You never know what you're going to get from season to season. Sometimes guys fall off. But I mean, he's as advertised, right? Like, what is this team's biggest weakness essentially going into this season? And that's the penalty kill. What is Thompson, really good at? Penalty killing, winning faceoffs, being responsible in his own end. So in terms of that, I mean, that's a great pickup for them, and he's paying dividends. I mean, penalty kill has been on fire the last couple of games. In terms of Aube-Kubel, I mean, he is what he is. When he has his good games, when he's consistent, he can be a really, big difference maker. His forechecking ability is, bar to none. When he's on his game and actually forechecking the way he should be, not taking, those huge, penalties where you're kind of putting your team at a disadvantage. That's kind of the game you want from him. I mean, last night he had that great scoring opportunity created with the breakaway, like you said, and then goes ahead and takes another kind of penalty that he probably shouldn't have taken. He could have backed off. So that's the only thing I'd like to see in his game. Like, just a little bit more consistency. Gotta kind of chill a bit with the penalties, because you put the Panthers on the power play that many times, and when they've already been there that many times throughout that game, it just shows eventually they're going to capitalize and take time off the board for you to come back in the game as well. And then, as you were saying, McEwen, I mean, he is a really fast skater, which I was not expecting. I mean, I didn't catch too many Vancouver games last season to really see his play from that perspective, but he's really good on the forecheck, really gets in there with an active stick. You could tell he's very aggressive, but the one thing that stands out for me for him is his skating. There was a play, I think, the other night against Florida where he was coming down the right wing and he just blew by one of the Florida defensemen and took a shot on Bobrovsky and almost even went in. So I think he'll be a surprise in terms of the fact that he might have a little bit more scoring touch than we're being led to believe. In junior, he was a really high scorer. Obviously, tons of players are high scorers in junior and have a ton of offensive ability. But I think with him and his speed, it might translate a bit more, especially in the NHL.
Yeah, no, for sure. I honestly think obviously we haven't seen Brown play yet, so I don't want to knock on Brown, but Aube-Kubel, I was already preaching this in the offseason that he's a guy that I would consider shipping out of town, not because I don't believe in him in any sense, but we're so close to up against the cap. I do feel like his role is replaceable in the team. And now you look at a guy like McEwen and Brown, who are both right-handed. I do wonder where his position on this team will be, moving forward. And he does have trade value. So I do wonder if he's a guy who might be in the cards to be moved for either another asset, get a pick back, trade at the trade deadline type of thing. Or maybe he sticks with the team and he gets better as the season goes on, because I don't think necessarily he's anything to give up on. But when I see a guy like McEwen and I see the intangibles that he has, just the overall size factor, the skating is just as good as Aube-Kubel, if not potentially better. I look at that and I go, that's the type of guy I really want on my fourth line.
Oh, yeah.
I want a big banger with a big body, but has a scoring upside and can drop the gloves if he has to. So I think he's been a great pickup for Chuck. And this has been like the year of Chuck Fletcher and the brilliant under the radar pickups. I think this is one of them.
You wouldn't have thought, like McEwen getting picked up off waivers just off the bat. I mean, probably nobody was really expecting it to be like anything, anything too spectacular, but he's showing, that a fourth liner can make a difference. But also if you're going to, pick between the two, let's say if I'm keeping Aube-Kubel in the lineup or keeping McEwen, I mean, obviously it's a small sample size for McEwen in a Flyers uniform at this point, but just based on what I'm seeing, I'll probably take McEwen over Aube-Kubel. That's no knock on NAK. It's just the fact that I think his game doesn't always translate in terms of the consistency, right? Like if we see him continuing to take the penalties he's taking, I don't believe he's going to be in the lineup very much longer. I know Vigneault today in his press conference, I think Charlie O'Connor asked him this question, if Brown's going to draw into the lineup at all during the road trip. And he said, since we're playing 3 games in 4 nights coming up, later this week, likely Brown's going to get into one of the games. So, I mean, who's going to come out? I have a hard time seeing it being McEwen or Thompson. So it's probably going to be NAK for Brown. And then let's say Brown, plays a similar game to NAK and without the penalties, then I mean, you're kind of left in a bit of a conundrum on what to do there. But either or, I mean, once Wade Allison gets back, I don't think I'd have either Brown or NAK in the lineup over him. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's the thing. I actually am not 100% convinced that NAK would have stuck with this lineup if Allison was available. I think that, I mean, you got to include Lazinski in that too. You talk about 2 guys who probably outplayed NAK last year. And at a certain point, it's like, yeah, this is all comes why I think maybe his time in Philadelphia might be ending sooner rather than later, while his value is high, while he's young.
Sorry,
no, please.
Pretty much like they're up at the max there with the 50 contracts.
Right.
So, I mean, if they're going to make a move at the deadline, which, I mean, you're hoping they're in the position to do that and they're actually competitive enough where it makes sense for the team to do that. But if they're going to end up making some sort of trade, somebody's got to go. And I mean, out of those guys, I would say NAK is probably the likeliest for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see. I mean,
yeah. We'll see. Again, I don't want to speak too early, but so far what I've been saying in the offseason still seems to be the case, even without Allison. They brought in McEwen, and that's another Allison-like player, I'd say, just not as talented. Yeah. Allison's got a much
doesn't have the shot. Shot.
But Allison, in my opinion, could be a potential top 6 forward.
I agree.
Just barring health concerns at this point. All right, let's talk about the PK real quick, and we can lump the defense into this as well if we want to talk about any specific defenseman. But the PK went. For the unfortunate nature of taking so many penalties, the PK did hold up strong. They gave up that one quick goal, unfortunately, to Huberdeau. But outside of that, I mean, they killed 6 of 7, which this team last year was not capable of doing that. No. So I think that's one of the positives to take away from that event, and the fact that the penalty kill held up against one of the better teams in the NHL. I do think there's positive. At least they got practice in there. It didn't end up hurting them completely in the game. And it's just nice to see that you don't have to kind of hold your breath every single time they go on the penalty kill, because it was absolutely brutal last year. I do think it was a good team effort. I don't really have anybody to really stick out there on the PK outside of for the fact that Atkinson put in that shorty. And no surprise, it just seems to be the type of season he's having. He probably could have had a couple shorthanded goals already this season. So what did you think about the PK?
I mean, the PK is looking a lot more improved just from the standpoint that their scheme, I mean, obviously it's only been 4 games, so it's hard to, point everything out that's changed, but you can tell they're trying to attack the puck carriers a lot more often when they're coming in through the neutral zone. And I think even Mike Yeo, assistant coach, mentioned that as well, that was a focus from the preseason onwards, that they want to make sure that they're attacking puck carriers and just not even letting, the other teams get into the zone. And that's a key, right? Because if they can't get set up and they're all discombobulated, it's going to be a lot harder for them to get scoring opportunities. So they've done a good job doing that. There's been some points, I think, where even against Florida, they're giving them a little bit too much time and space, but it's going to come, right? You can tell that they're really working on it and that they're taking the time to kind of make adjustments where they need to. Just looking here, I just pulled up on NHL.com. So the Flyers are 81.3% for their penalty killing percentage right now. That puts them at 15th in the league. So, I mean, obviously it's only been 4 games, so it's hard to gauge, but I mean, it's not 30th like last season.
Yeah.
So that's already an improvement for sure. And then I do believe, as you were saying, 6-7 against the Panthers. I'm pretty sure they're either 4 out of 4 or 5 out of 5 against Boston, and then 1-for-1 against the Kraken. It's really only that first game against Vancouver where the PK kind of was looking like how it did last season. But I mean, like I said, that's 1 game. I mean,
it was one period more than was 1 game too.
Exactly.
Second period.
Yeah, but
go ahead, please finish your thought.
Across 82 games, you're going to have those periods, those games where there's going to be a lapse on the PK. But I mean, if they can stay anywhere from 15th to like 10th in the league, that's a huge improvement. That's like 20 spots up from what did they have? I think 73% last season.
Whatever it was far too low to be respectable.
Yeah. And I mean, we all know, right? If you're going to have success in this league, special teams is a big part of it. If you can't kill a penalty in a key point of a game,
you're not making the playoffs, or you're not going far in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
Without a doubt. And thank you for pulling up those numbers, because I was actually going to say it's been an improving penalty kill as well. I would actually argue that every game it's looked better than the last. So that's also a great sign. And the fact that they're already sitting at 15th, I mean, you could see that trending up if they continue doing what they're doing, because they do seem like a relatively confident team. Even when they get hemmed in their own zone, they don't really seem to be too concerned about it. They seem to kind of just look for that counter punch immediately and keep a level head, which I think is really strong.
And you have like Atkinson and Farabee together, like you were alluding to earlier, and they already have that chemistry playing together on the same line, 5-on-5. So you kind of get, that on the PK as well. Those guys are always moving their feet. Their sticks are active. They're always in the right place on the ice. And you can really tell and see, how crucial they are, especially to the penalty kill. And then you have another PK, combo of, I saw them, they were trotting out Couturier and Thompson a couple times, and then they also had a Thompson and Lawton, a Couturier and Lawton. So you can kind of mix and match depending on where what the play was beforehand. Let's say you had Giroux and Couturier and Konechny out just as they got a penalty, you kind of put out Thompson, Lawton, or vice versa. So there's a lot of variety, and then that's even without Kevin Hayes, and I mentioned Lindblom as well. So they have a good cast of penalty killers for sure. Even defensively, I mean, you have Braun, who's notoriously a great penalty killer. Provorov was really solid against Florida, and they're a great power play team, especially from last season as well. The only concern maybe on the PK for me is we'll see how the likes of Ristolainen and Sanheim perform. They weren't too bad last game. They did a good job. I don't know if that's going to continue from game to game, but I do see Ristolainen's game getting, closer to kind of what we want aside from the first Bruins game. It's going to take some time for him, though. He missed a couple of games. Who really knows, how banged up he still is. So we'll see with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think we will see an improvement, and I think we'll see an improvement from Sanheim, who I think his game has actually gotten stronger every game as well. Bristow, I think honestly, he just didn't get enough time in with the team. I think Ryan Ellis is just kind of a more elite player, so he fits in a lot easier. Where a guy like, yeah, exactly, a guy like Ristolainen probably need a little bit more time, especially playing with Sanheim. I think they have to learn from each other a little bit more. All right, let's go into the power play real quick. So far, and again, I don't have numbers in front of me, so I'm just going off my gut instinct on this one. So far, in my opinion, the power play has definitely looked better. The overall big difference is not actually the top unit, in my opinion. It's actually the fact that we have a reliable second unit, where the second unit was completely irrelevant last year at times. And now it seems to be almost just as threatening as the first unit. And that was, last night, obviously, we didn't have Ryan Ellis for the second unit. So I do think it's a little bit of a loss there. But, especially when Kevin Hayes comes back and Ryan Ellis is there, you're looking at two very strong units. And overall, I think they've been playing better. You add that in with the penalty kill doing better. Now you're talking about a team that does look like a playoff team, one that can be threatening on the power play and the penalty kill. What do you think about the power play outside of Giroux, scoring that bomb the other night? What do you think about the way they've been moving the puck and kind of just creating chances?
Well, yeah, what you just said right there, puck movement's the key for me. Just seeing the way that they're moving the puck back and forth, they're a lot less stationary. And I think that's been kind of a staple of the Flyers power plays of the past. And maybe it's just a lot of familiarity. Like you had Giroux and Voracek on the opposite flanks of each other for almost 10 seasons. I mean, they know, or they knew, okay, we've had tons of success running these plays for years. So they kind of go back to the well. But now, I mean, you take Voracek away, you give Couturier a bigger opportunity, you remove Ghost from the equation and add in a guy like Yandel, who's a great facilitator of the puck. And it's just a different dynamic, right? Like it's less, in the comfort zone, I think. And I think that's going to pay dividends because you have, the whole unit trying to move around a lot more, more willing to take chances, do different looks. Like we saw Giroux on the right side versus the left hand wall, a lot last season, but you didn't see him moving around like he has been this season. Like you see him he'll start at the point, then he'll drop down below the goal line and then come back to the point, then shift back around and switch with JVR, which you weren't really seeing a lot of that movement. You kind of just see the guys stand in the same spots that they were. And if you look at any successful power play, at least in the modern day NHL, it's all about the movement and getting open, right? If you're staying stationary and you're not moving around and you're making it predictable, sending it back to the point for shots, I mean, it's not going to be as successful. And then just in terms of the numbers, I mean, the power play wasn't as bad as the penalty kill last season. I do believe it was around like 20th or so in the league. This season so far, the Flyers are 4th in the NHL and at 36.4%. Only teams ahead of them are Edmonton, St. Louis, Carolina, which all have pretty decent power plays. So already, I mean, you're seeing it pay off in terms of the numbers. And like you said, a good power play is something that's going to be able to break the game, right? You're at a 2-2 tie, let's say hypothetically. I mean, you get a power play, you want that to build momentum. You don't want to take away. Where last season, I feel like there was a lot of situations where the Flyers power play was taking away the momentum. They'd be playing really good 5-on-5 hockey. They go to the power play and it's a straight momentum killer. And then the other team kind of pounces on them after that penalty kill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think Yandel does play a really big role in that because just the precision and way he thinks. Like, I think Ghost has obviously a very similar skill set, but he was a lot less precise and steady on the back end. Yandel doesn't seem to get rattled by any single play. He just always seems to have a good pass available to him. And if he doesn't, he seems to get a good shot on net. And it's funny that you said that the comment about the power play hurting them last year. Ironically, even though their power play has looked very good, it is the nail in the coffin last game against Florida, right, where they give up that shorty. And I was like sitting there, and I actually do blame Giroux on that play a little bit because I think he should have had that. That player should have been covered.
Hart made a great save, and then I mean they're at the end of the shift, so it's hard to gauge. Like, what are Giroux's legs like? Okay, he's skating all the way back. He's a little bit of an older guy now in his career. So he tried to get back. He didn't make it in time. And then you have the guy bank it in, off Hart's pad after a great save. And that's the game, essentially. I mean, that's just the thing of, you're at the end of your shift and it's kind of more of not a learning experience, but if they just dump that puck in, it doesn't happen, right? So obviously you look at that in the future and you hope the team learns from it and they say, okay, next time if we're in this situation, we already have a 1-goal lead, let's just dump the puck in, change units, and then we're ready to rock, right?
Yeah, that's why it killed me, because it was just avoidable. It was avoidable, and I didn't feel like, oh, they scored, that's the game, but I was like, man,
it's going to be tough now.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anything would kill momentum for your team, it's giving up a shorthanded goal to lose the game breaking against a team as good as this one. And again, they had some good chances. Not like the game was over at that point, but it was just kind of a backbreaker. Now you mentioned Carter Hart, and I do want to talk about him. He did make a great save there on that initial shot. I would say outside of one period in this preseason so far, which was the second period of Vancouver, I think Carter Hart has been exceptional, actually. I don't think he's just been good. I think he looks like he could end up being one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League this year. And if the team plays, I would argue, even better in front of him, again, knock on wood, whatever people want to say. I mean, if he continues playing the way he does, this is the Vezina caliber guy that I saw that either now or in the future, who I believe he really is, because he is able to steal games. Bob played well as well. But I do think that Carter Hart, and I think this will build as the season goes on, I think we're seeing a guy kind of continue where he really left off and kind of just stealing the show and being incredibly solid.
Yeah, it seems like he's building on it from a game-to-game basis. And I mean, if you watch the team in 2019-20, he's looking like that guy again, which is what the Flyers want. They don't want to see him looking like any comprehensible thing to last year. Like, you don't want to see Hart play like that second period or anything like that. And it's more about the technique. Hart's on his game when he's technically sound and he's on top of his crease and he's confident, right? When you see him back in the crease, things like that, that's a sign, at least to me, that he's not playing up to his capabilities. But how many, spectacular saves did he make in that
already
to keep them in it, right, throughout the game? So
he's had like a couple of his best saves ever already in the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah, that one diving save the other night too against Seattle, that changes the whole tone of the game, and it could have been a different game if that goes in. But that's what you want from your goalie, right? You want him to make those big saves, and it's a big momentum changer for the team. And you could tell, right, last season when Hart was kind of basically letting everything in, that doesn't, bode well for a team playing in front of him, because you're going to be trying to overcompensate. If you're a player and in the back of your head, you're thinking, okay, my goalie's going to not let in every shot, but he's letting like a lot of them in, or a huge majority, you're going to be playing a different style. You're going to be thinking not offense first, which is what you need to do to win. You're going to be thinking more passive, playing passively, passive aggressive kind of style, which I think for the Flyers to be successful, they need to be deep on the forecheck. They need to be aggressive. They need to be intense, and having Hart back there, just being solid in his normal self, that's going to just do, it's great for him in general personally, but it's also great for the team in front of him, because they're not worrying about Carter Hart or worrying about, is he going to make this save if I give a breakaway? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? So
it's more the opposite now. He's going to bail us out.
Exactly.
And I would even argue that this is maybe the best he's ever looked in his career. I know the numbers don't necessarily say that yet, but he just making everything look like there are some saves where I'm like, this should be at least a really good scoring opportunity. And the way he makes the save just gets the puck out of danger or just completely nullifies the play. I think this is.
I'll bring one play up specifically. Sure. I think it was in the second period, and one of the Panthers players were coming in almost an odd man rush. They rip a shot right from the top of the circle, and he comes right out top of his crease, even above the blue paint, just makes a huge glove save, no rebound, no anything. Where last season, I don't think we would have seen him even come halfway out of his net to make that save. He would have probably stayed in there. And that just shows the confidence level that he has right now. He knows in his mind, okay, I'm going to play my game. I'm going to play to my techniques, my strengths. And from that point, I'm going to make that save, right? And that's a lot of it with goaltending. A lot of it can be mindset, right? I mean, if you think you're going to make the save, it doesn't mean you are, but you're going to have a better chance. If it's in the back of your head, okay, the guy's coming in or coming down on me on a breakaway and, I don't know if I'm going to make the save, it's probably going to go in the net behind you. So confidence is a big factor with that position. So you can tell the way he's playing right now that he has it. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also confidence in his defense, which last year, the way the team played defensively was downright pathetic. And not just the defense, I mean, the entire team. And I think it's like a trickle effect. I think it's all kind of connected, and I think there's a reason why you're seeing everything kind of work out at the exact same time.
Definitely.
So let's move on to next game. So Flyers go up against the Edmonton Oilers on Wednesday. We're recording this on Monday night, so we got another day in between. So you'll probably hear this on a Tuesday. But this is going to be a big game. Edmonton Oilers are a very strong offensive team. They obviously have some talent on the back end. It's not that surprising they're 5-0. They are in a weaker division. It's not like the Metro, which we'll talk about after this.
They haven't played the toughest teams either yet. So.
Exactly, but Connor McDavid is still an absolute threat. He is on a ridiculous pace. I think right now he's on pace for 200 points or something this year, which it would not shock me if the guy put up like 170 points. He's that good.
Yeah, almost like 110 last year in like 50 games. So
yeah, it's outrageous. The kid
I think right now I'm just looking at the stats. He's got 13 points in 5 games. So
yeah,
not too shabby.
Exactly. It's an over 200 game pace at this point, or a 200 point pace at this point. So maybe the Flyers will be the first one to shut them down. I will say, I especially if Ryan Ellis is in this lineup. And again, I still miss Kevin Hayes, but he's not going to be 100% when he comes back anyway. But with Ryan Ellis in that lineup, I do think the Flyers still match up pretty strong against the Edmonton Oilers. I think they have definitely have an opportunity here to take this game, move back up the division, and stop Edmonton. I mean, they're a good team, but they're not a great team, so they might be due for a loss here. They're not as good as the Florida Panthers. Go ahead.
They're definitely not as good as the Panthers, and I think a factor that you got to look at too is Smith's injured, right? Mike Smith is out. It is Mikko Koskinen in net, and I mean Koskinen has been okay. He's a decent backup. They initially signed him to be the starter, really, and it didn't work out, and then went over to Smith last season.
Who's 40 years old.
Yeah, who's 40 years old. And what happens with 40-year-old goalies, just like what just happened, they get injured. So, I mean, now they're back to Koskinen. We'll see. I mean, you're a 5-0 team. It's a West team playing an East team. I think this might be a bit of a trap game for the Oilers in a sense. They're already 5-0. Like I said, they're playing the Flyers coming in. They're riding high. I think the Flyers can capitalize, have a good game. But like you said, a key for me is definitely Ellis coming back, right? You have the likes of David, Draisaitl, even Puljujärvi. He can score. He's a good scoring winger. And with McDavid, and Hyman's been lighting it up too. I think he has 5 goals in 5 games as well. A new signing for them. So, I mean, Ellis is going to be crucial. They have to be strong defensively. The most important thing, though, is can't take 7 penalties against the Oilers and win the game. So 100%. They're going to have to be a lot more disciplined in that regard. And I mean, Hart is in his hometown, so I think he'll have a good showing as well. He's going to give him a chance to win. The Flyers just need to stay out of the box and play their game, and I think they can get a W. But it's something where, I mean, you look at the Metro division; it's so competitive. If they lose this game, like they're already playing catch up. So it's not a must-win game. It's the 5th game of the season, but you'd like to get a win, get a point at least.
Absolutely. Actually, Hart did struggle in Edmonton last year.
I know. That's why I'm thinking he's going to rebound.
Yeah. No, I don't think that that's a normal case. I don't think he's a kid who crumbles under pressure or anything like that. I do think so far, just for those who are not aware, Ryan Ellis was at practice with the team. He did leave early, but AV did say, I mean, he's still day to day, but we have 2 days left here as of, the practice today. And he is close to returning. So if he doesn't return against Edmonton, it's a shame, but he's not a long-term injury. In this case, I would bet that he probably wants to play. So looking like there's a good chance he will.
I'm thinking he will. I mean, AV said game time decision. I feel like Alice is a scrappy guy, kind of knows, the team needs to start getting back on the winning track after that loss against Florida, left a bit of a bad taste in their mouth. I think we'll see him in.
Yeah.
That's wishful thinking, but I
would say no, I feel you. There's a little, there's a little bit of positivity there, but I mean, I could see a scenario again, like they're going to be on the road, and I think that can actually be a good opportunity as well. Obviously, they played all at home so far. Yeah. I think they could probably use a road trip to kind of get away. They're going to be away from home together as a team, and I think there's an opportunity to play good team D, and that's what, like you said, that's the type of game they're going to have to play to beat Edmonton. Like if you go run and gun with them, and you let Connor McDavid out, and obviously they have Draisaitl as well. It's not really the type of game you want to play against them. You want to kind of shut them down. You want to play solid defensively. You want to attack with all four lines. It's really interesting. Like as I sit here, and I know I keep talking about Kevin Hayes, but like I do wonder if this team can get healthy, like completely as a unit, and everybody's playing. I mean, the amount of depth that is available. And you talk about Scott Lawton being fourth line center with McEwen, and whether it be Thompson or Brown on the on the left side, or if Allison is playing at that point, I'm not even sure.
It's even more depth.
You just think about the amount of goal scoring that could come from the entire lineup. It's a very difficult team to match up against when healthy.
That's the thing.
So if they can get healthy, that'd be awesome. But even if not, like the fact they were playing as well as they are already without Kevin Hayes, I think it's a really good sign. But
definitely. But the thing is with Hayes too is, I mean, he's coming off those, it's a 2 core muscle surgeries.
Yes.
And you know that, I mean, we've seen Giroux in the past get that same surgery, Gostisbehere as well.
Giroux, Gostisbehere, Patrick.
You see him kind of lose a step. So I don't expect, Hayes to be 100%, and he wasn't a burner to begin with. So, I mean, his skating will definitely be effective, but it's more just the fact that you have him in the lineup. If you're a team, you got to think to yourself, okay, I have Couturier, Giroux, Konechny. Then let's say you keep Brassard, Farabee, and Atkinson together, and then you have Hayes, JVR, Lindblom. Like Hayes, JVR, Lindblom could be a second line on most teams. So you really have to think about the matchup. If you're matching up your best defensive, pair against Couturier's line, and then Atkinson and the Hayes line, whoever is rolling, you can kind of just play to their strength. It's almost like having 2 second lines. So
absolutely, I would totally agree with that. And again, it depends how they play. I mean, the one thing, it's like they're all names on paper if the execution is not there. But so far, like look at what the Pittsburgh Penguins are doing. They're missing key guys, and it's not even slowing them down. So it's really about how the team plays, the execution, the level of intensity, and just honestly the discipline. And that's the one thing where I could see Aube-Kubel sitting, like you were saying, like when it comes down to discipline, like you don't want that extra penalty a game. And there's not a big difference between him and Brown and McEwen.
In terms of scoring, definitely not.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about a little bit the Metro Division. We'll end with a little bit of prospect talk. So we did want to talk about the Metro here. Right now, the Flyers do stand in last place of the Metro. Prior to losing the game, they were in second place in the Metro. They are a game. They have played a game fewer than everybody except for the New Jersey Devils. Right now, the Rangers are in first place with their 4-1-1 with 9 points, and they have 6 games. The Hurricanes are 4-0 with 8 points. Penguins are 3-0-2 with 8 points. Capitals 3-0-2 with 8 points. Islanders 3-2-1 and with 7 points. They've been moving up slowly. Devils are 3-1 with 6 points. Blue Jackets are 3-2 with 6 points, and the Flyers are 2-1-1 with 5. So obviously, huge game as far as moving up the standings. Still very early, but it shows how much of a loss that Florida game was, and how key that would have been, because they'd be sitting right now. They'd be sitting right now in the middle of the division with essentially a game in hand or 2 games in hand on everybody above them. So, not a big deal, but it is interesting to talk about. Some surprises. I think New Jersey being 3-1 is a surprise at this point. I can't see that holding up. Maybe I'm wrong, but they're a +1. I definitely don't see that holding up. Columbus, I think, will drop off as the season goes on. I think the Islanders will move their way up. I think the Penguins will probably stay where they're at. And I think the Rangers will probably drop down a little bit, but they'll be in the battle. But other than that, not that surprising. What do you think?
I mean, the Metro, I don't know, like it's just a division of death for me, at least this year, because so many teams are improved. Like the Devils adding in Dougie Hamilton. Now you have Subban playing a second pair role where he doesn't have as many minutes to go.
Sure.
The Rangers, their prospects are getting older. You still have Panarin, and Shesterkin's a great goalie. And then the Islanders are the Islanders. They're not starting off the best, but it's also a 13-game road trip to start for them. So if you're looking at their perspective, probably just a 500 road trip and then get home, that's probably a success for them.
And they won 2 in a row, just to your point.
Yeah. And I mean, the Penguins, is it just every year you think this is the year that the Penguins are going to fall off?
Every year. And
especially with this year where you have Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Rust is out too. All these guys are out right now.
Yeah, Gensel was out for their first game. They still won.
That's the thing. So it'd be hilarious to see them all come back and they start to slide, which I mean is who knows, but it would kind of be funny to see that. I don't know if it's going to happen. I think
they've also scored 23 goals in the first 5 games of the year.
Yeah, so I don't know how sustainable that is. We'll see. I mean,
let's hope not.
I had a stat here, so just to speak to how competitive the Metro Division is. Altogether, there's 39 games played between all the teams. There's only been 7 regulation losses, 7 OT losses, 25 cumulative wins between all the teams in the division. So that just shows there's only been 7 games across the whole division where the team hasn't picked up any points.
And so, I mean, if you look at the other divisions, for people to put in perspective, every team's got a team that's lost. Every division has a team that's lost 5 games
or 4
in regulation, except for Pacific. It has Seattle lost 4 and Vegas lost 4.
So it just shows it's going to be tough. And that's why we're saying, it's still early, but that game that they lost against the Panthers, I mean, that could be a difference. At this point, every game is a difference in a division like this. So it's going to be a battle till the end. Personally, I think Carolina's going to take the division. And then you'll have the Islanders second. And then for third, it's going to be between Philly, the Caps, the Pens, and the Rangers, and we'll see. And then obviously there's wild card spots on the table as well. But that Atlantic division is really good. They have good teams. So you don't want to get into a battle with, in your own division and with another division too. So it's in the Flyers' best interest to try to get in the top 3 for sure. Because that wild card race is going to be crazy.
It definitely will. But it is good to know that the other side of the Eastern Conference is not going to be as strong for that wild card spot. And I will say this, and again, I'm harping on it again. You look at the teams that are doing well in this division. If the Flyers are a healthy team, there's not a single team, and I include Carolina in this, that the Flyers do not match up against. You can say Carolina, but the Flyers are better goaltending. With every single one of these teams, outside of the Islanders who have a lot of depth, there really isn't a team that has more depth and has has some kind of large edge over us. So I do think it's an open wide division, but I don't disagree with you.
They can definitely hang. They can definitely hang. I think they'll be able to match up and play with any team in this division. But it's probably going to come up to, like I said, interdivisional play. If they're successful and can beat out a lot of the opponents in the division, they're going to have a great season. They're going to be a lock for a playoff spot, just like that 2019-20 season. I think their record against the Metro was insane. They only had a handful of losses, maybe 5.
That's definitely key.
That. Yeah, so
I agree.
If they can perform against those division rivals, it's going to be smooth sailing. So I think that's the major key. Hoping we see the Penguins fall off a bit, just because that was in my predictions, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, and I think some people are predicting the Capitals too, and obviously that has not happened so far. And I think that's why I keep talking about Kevin Hayes being important, even if he is a third line center on this team. It changes the matchups. There's a trickle-down effect that, it's going to be very noticeable. Even a guy like Scott Lawton, you put him on the 4th line, there's a good chance he's getting at least one great scoring chance a game playing on the 4th line, because the matchups will be ridiculous, because most teams don't have a 4th line player to Scott Lawton's caliber. Exactly. And it's noticeable. Every time he plays on the 4th line dominates. And if we have a fourth line that can really, and they played well last game, I'd argue, if you have a fourth line that creates troubles for other teams, that means the rest of your lines have more room as well. And I just think there's a big trickle down effect. And I think health will, play a large role into this season.
Yeah, because if you have a player like Lawton on the fourth line, I mean, you're arguably, putting out probably one of the best fourth lines in the league because he's a third line player, really. Like
exactly.
In terms of talent levels. So if you had, let's say, Hayes comes back and then him, McEwen and Thompson, I feel like the energy of McEwen and Lawton together, they're both pretty fast skaters going on a forecheck. That would be hard for like third pair defensemen to deal with and other fourth lines. So
absolutely.
Big advantage for sure.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think that's where you get that extra goal that you need and, that extra shift that you need in that game-changing moment. You get it through mismatches like that.
Yeah, and there's no hesitation too.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a coach to put a line like that out, you have Lawton on the fourth line. You're not going to be like, maybe I wouldn't put the fourth line out right now when we need, a solid shift. But with him on there, there's, like I said, I think Vigneault has, no hesitation in terms of getting them out there.
Totally. And I know the Phantoms haven't been doing well, but this is where a guy even like Cam York comes up. I know we have Sealer, who I think has done a very admirable job in his role. But if there is like another injury, to Yandel, or I doubt it, right? Or somebody like Sanheim, right?
Yeah.
You do have a guy like Cam York sitting there in the minors as well. It's like this team is at least built for backup plans at every position. And if, Morgan Frost can get his game together, that's also a big addition. And then we talk about Wade Allison. If he comes back, that's a huge addition. So there's still room here for growth within the season as well, which I think is great, and backup for every position. Maybe not as much goaltending, but we'll see how that goes. All right, let's get into the prospects here. We'll wrap up on that. Just want to talk about 4 different players here, just for quick updates. Let's start off with Elliot De Noier. He just had a 5-point game, I believe, last game. I think he had a hat trick and 2 assists, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he had a hat trick. He's at 13 points in 6 games right now.
Yes, for the plus 8, 6 goals, 7 assists, 6 games.
So he's killing it. And
captain.
Yeah, that too. So he's doing a good job. He's killing it. That's what you want to see from him. At this point, I mean, this is his 4th year in the queue. So he's an overager now. He's 19 years old. So you want to see a player like him dominating at that level, right? If he wasn't putting those points up, it would be a concern. And think about the value, 5th round pick.
It's fantastic.
Exactly. Another great find by Fletcher.
Two-way guy as well. Not just a one-dimensional player.
And he might even want to drop the gloves. We saw in the preseason that might be something in his game that isn't the biggest element, but He's obviously willing, right? I mean, he's going to do that his first NHL preseason game. That just shows he's a gamer.
Yeah, he seems like a type of guy who's going to make the NHL a lot earlier than most young guys. He seems to just get it. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
The compete level is very high, and we saw that in the preseason game. The skill level is better than people anticipated. He plays above his weight class. He clearly has leadership abilities, clearly an immensely hard worker. The coaching staff already likes him. The Halifax moves heads obviously like him because he came over to the team and now he's team captain, a year later. He just seems like a great prospect. So honestly, kudos to him. And let's see if he can break 100 points this year because, that would kind of put him on.
He's on pace.
He's definitely on pace to do so. And if he does, I mean, maybe he'll get some opportunities with, I think, he's Canadian. So maybe he'll get opportunities with the Canadian team, or anything like that. Cause I wouldn't be shocked if he plays like a 4th line role for, at the World Juniors or something like that, at the way that he's playing. Like it wouldn't be surprising. Yeah. All right, let's talk about another guy, Connor Mclennan. This is a guy who's been in the WHL for about 5 seasons so far, one which is very, very short season, which means he got there super early and super young. He is 19 years old. He is undersized at 5'8", 160. He was taken as a 6th-round pick, but it was actually ranked as high as a 1st-round pick and for some reason dropped very, very low, which doesn't seem very fair because he's been either like essentially a good player to point per game player, above point per game player last year. And this year he's on an absolute tear. He's got 8 goals, 6 assists in 9 games, plus 13. undersized guy. I think he'll take time, but this is a guy with definite NHL upside, in my opinion. His size might hold him back if he can utilize that in the NHL. But he's very skilled, and he looked really good in preseason. Again, a right-handed shooter. What do you think about Connor Mclennan? What do you think about the type of season he's having so far?
Just for, I mean, where they picked him in the draft in the 6th round, like you were saying, I mean, he had the 1st round upside dropped. I believe there were some injuries involved in terms of that. So that makes a lot of sense. He's feisty, right? He likes to get in there on the forecheck. He likes to make it known that, you know, it's time to bang the body when it's time to bang the body, but he also has a scoring touch as well. So it's kind of more of a complete game. I don't know if he would be a scorer at the NHL level, but I think it's somebody that you would have slotting in maybe 3rd line, 2nd line potentially. And I mean, the size is something that might hold him back, but as we know in the NHL now, I mean, size isn't everything. If you can play and you have the IQ, which it looks like he definitely does have out there, he should, you know, get a chance down the line at some point.
It's funny because all 3 guys that we're going to talk about right now are all the same height outside of Elliot. That brings us into our next one, and that is Emile Andre. This is the former 2nd round pick from 2020, 54th overall. Highly skilled young guy, plays way above his weight class at 5'8". I think he might be 5'9", but 5'8", 181, so much thicker than most guys his age, for at that height for his age. So obviously he has strength. And at this point for HV71, and he's playing the Swedish Elite League here, he has 1 goal, 9 assists, 10 points in 9 games with a +6. That is, if people are not aware, for the Swedish Hockey League, that is very good, especially for a defenseman. And it's a huge jump up from last year. Go ahead.
That puts him at tied 1st in defenseman scoring in that league.
And number 1 on his team, obviously.
Yeah, and everybody he's tied with is 28, 32, 29, 37. So it just shows he's at a young age. He's looking very promising offensively. And I mean, somebody to keep an eye on for him, at least as a comparable. I mean, his defensive game isn't there yet, but in terms of the way he sets up on the power play and just the savviness, a Kimmo Timonen type is to him.
Yeah, dude, that's a great example. Actually, I really like that. It's another guy who plays above. Kimmo's a little bit bigger, but another guy who plays above his weight class. I'm just trying to understand why the Flyers took a chance on this guy. I don't know if you know Steve Kornianos, but obviously he's a friend of the show, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
So he's actually really high on Emile Andre. He actually thinks he was the number 1 Swedish defenseman, that was available that year. And he said if he had a bigger size, it would have easily been a 1st round pick and never would have dropped to the 2nd round.
Yeah. I always thought that was a great pick that they made, just for where they grabbed him. And I mean, the fact I haven't watched a ton of his games or anything like that, but when you see some of the plays, you just can tell like the IQ and the savviness is there. And that's what you want ultimately in a player. Like if they're not going to have upside in terms of offense, or let's say they might not be, the most solid defensively, that hockey IQ is so important because quick plays, that's what you need to succeed in the NHL. You don't want to be thinking too much, right?
Yeah, and he is physical. Most people probably wouldn't be aware of that at 5'8", but he is known to lay the body out. You mentioned Kimmo Timonen. That is definitely a guy who he was never like a big hitter, but if you came at him, there's a good chance you were the one that was falling to the ground.
It was deceptive almost for him.
Yeah, deceptively strong. And, Ryan Ellis, I think, is probably the better comparison here. Maybe actually, because Ellis, I think, is 5'10". Maybe
same kind of deal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same kind of deal. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Ryan Ellis, but seems to be at least a similar mold. And honestly, at the pace that he's going right now, I could definitely see him playing in the AHL next year. Typically, they like to let guys develop there, but the fact that he's already a point per game player, the AHL is a more competitive league slightly. I could see a chance
Swedish
there
league's
where
a good league. Swedish league's a really good league. So just the fact that he's playing as well as he is, I mean,
exactly,
he might get some AHL time, but I mean, I could see the jump being quick to the NHL potentially for him.
Well, that's why I say that, right? Because if you want to adapt him to the U.S. league, right, the U.S. size rink, there's no better option than really the AHL. It's the closest thing to the NHL game,
100%.
and it's arguably the 2nd best league in the world, right? You really have like the Swedish leagues a step below slightly because they don't have the full strength of teams and they don't have the elite prospects mixed within there, at least not to the same degree. And then you have the KHL, which, let's be honest, they don't play D. Well, they don't play
Yeah,
D.
it's true.
So not to the same level that like even the Swedish league or, like the Finns and the Swedes, they always play stronger D than the Russians for some freaking reason. I never really understood that because, you look at the old Russian army team. I mean, that team won with precision. Like what happened along the way where like this very serious country just stopped caring about D? I don't know what happened, but obviously Ivan Provorov will probably be number 1 D of Russia at some point.
Probably.
All right, let's get into the last player, and this is another 5'8" player. This is Bobby Brink, who was the second-round pick in 2019 after somewhat of a down year because he had a very good first year for University of Denver. Did deal with some injuries. He did have a successful sprint there with the U.S. national team. I believe he played with them for a little bit last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So he did have a successful stint with them, but then coming back, maybe with some injuries, I can't remember exactly, but he just wasn't to the same level. I know his team struggled immensely last year, and that was probably a big part of it. He was still just 18, turning 19 years old. Pretty young guy, but now he's 20 years old. University of Denver. He's got 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points, +9 in 6 games. And this is at the college level. So that is a big deal, being above a point per game player and a +9. Looks to be like
structure in those leagues. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. It's a men's league. They do have big, strong players in there. Obviously, some elite talent as well. Not too far off from the AHL. Obviously, not like the AHL, but at least has similar qualities. What do you think about Bobby Brink?
Bobby Brink is interesting because I watched a ton of World Junior Championship games last season where they won the gold medal and he was on that team. And he brings, he has a great shot. And that's obviously why the Flyers selected him because, they're lacking shooters in the organization in terms of depth and just that, facet of a game, of somebody's game in general. So just the fact that he has a quick shot, has a heavy shot, that was obviously the reason they picked him. And he still has those qualities. He's very feisty, like in the corners and things like that. And in terms of just forechecking, a player that he reminds me of that, the Flyers just acquired, he's obviously not the same in terms of the defensive acumen, but Cam Atkinson and him, that's a comparable for me, I would say. They're both small guys, both have nice shots, both love to shoot the puck. So if that's his ultimate upside, that's obviously a big win for the Flyers. Who knows, if he's going to get to that point. But like I said, the more shooters in the organization at this point, the better for the team. With him, Forster, even Wisdom has a really nice shot as well. So just adding to that, and then you hope one of them pans out and makes it to the big club. Absolutely.
I think that's well said. And there probably is some similarities with him and Cam Atkinson. Hopefully he develops into that type of player because the Flyers could definitely use another one like that. And it's just good to see him bounce back. I feel like he kind of fell off the radar a little bit. Yeah. It always seems that if you struggle a little bit, people stop caring. All right. That is the wrap up for our show today. Vasili, let people know what you're working on. Thank you again for coming on, but let people know what you're working on. Do you have any articles coming out? Let them know your handle. Just give a shout out.
Yeah, sure. So I should have a couple articles coming out actually Wednesday morning for flyersnitty.com. So cool. You guys can go check that out. I'm not going to give away what they're about. You'll have to click and read and find out. If you guys want to, throw me a follow on Twitter, I'm at FlyerItUp. And hopefully, you guys would find my tweets engaging. I usually try to do some live tweets throughout the game and just throw some tidbits out there about Flyers hockey. But I just want to thank you, Yariv, for having me on tonight. It was a pleasure joining you on the podcast, and hopefully we can do it again sometime soon. And go Flyers going into this road trip.
Yeah, hell yeah. And absolutely, I'll definitely have you back on. You did great. And maybe we'll have you come on with somebody else from the team as well. We'll have more of a group chat in the future.
Perfect.
But yeah, no, thank you again, man. Really appreciate you coming on. Sorry it took so long to get you on here, but now that you're on here, I think it was a great conversation. I like that it was just hockey, all hockey, and nothing but hockey. That's how I like to keep this show. I don't like all the distractions that a lot of the other podcasts do. They go off on all this stuff that I could care less about.
It's a hockey podcast. You got to stick to hockey.
You got to stick to hockey. And it's actually a great shout out to Jason Martinez, who used to have the Stick to Hockey podcast, and I actually love that.
That was a great podcast.
Yeah, and a great name because I totally agree. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Really appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, comment, do the whole thing. If you can share it out. Also, humongous help. Anywhere you can share it. Don't care. Send it to your friend. Put it on social media. Whatever it is you can do. It is a very, very big help. And yeah, please make sure you subscribe. Though we do have a pretty good subscriber to listener percentage, but everything helps. Trying to get it more noticed on YouTube. Subscribing and the thumbs up is definitely a huge benefit. Make sure to check out the store. It's in the details as well. Jamie did a great job setting it up, so just make sure you keep checking it out. Again, follow me at Wolok. I never tell people to do that, but definitely do it. Yeah, make sure to follow Vasili as well. And thank you everybody for listening. It's been an awesome journey so far. Going to keep it going, and let's hope the Flyers continue to win, so this is a positive year. All right, thank you again, everybody, and remember to always stay gritty.